Seeing as Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites were both co-created by Justin Roiland, it's unsurprising that there are a number of similarities between the two. Both are wacky animated shows that follow eccentric characters and are stuffed with pop culture references, sci-fi tropes, and dark humor. But their similarities run even deeper than that. In this video, we'll take a look at 10 of the biggest similarities between the two shows.
Show me what you got!
Now, this first one's pretty obvious, but impossible to ignore, and that is the voice cast. That's because Justin Roiland, who co-creates both shows, voices Corvo in Solar Opposites, as well as both Rick and Morty. I mean, even if you did not know that for sure, you probably would have guessed, seeing that Corvo and Rick sound pretty similar.
Now listen, I need your help, Morty! This guy is fascinating.
But it's not just Roiland that provides his voice for all shows with, get ready for it, Thomas Middleditch, Alfred Molina, Christina Hendricks, Kerry Walgreen, Andrew Daly, Alan Tudyk, Gary Anthony Williams, and Tom Kenny, all voicing characters on both shows. Also, Solar Opposites is basically the result of Justin Roiland without Dan Harmon, but Solar Opposites' other co-creator, Michael McMahon, is also a writer on Rick and Morty, making the creative team also very similar. Roiland also uses another trait of his from Rick and Morty, with him often improvising during takes, something which is pretty rare in the world of animation.
I don't even know what's real anymore.
Not only does it just sound the same, but it also looks the same. Both shows have a very distinctive animation style, with the same use of shapes and colors and those strange pupils that stare right into your soul. This is no surprise though. The Simpsons creator, Matt Groening's other shows, Futurama and Disenchantment, also look pretty similar to one another, so we can't blame Solar Opposites for using the heavily stylized visuals of Rick and Morty. Another notable similarity between the shows is the character dynamics. Roiland's Corvo and Middleditch's Terry have a similar character dynamic to both Rick and Morty. Corvo is a genius cynic who often has a pessimistic view of the world and uses science to get himself out of hotspots, while Terry is more naive and optimistic and enjoys human culture and Earth. And like Morty, his name also ends with a Y. Also, seeing as Yumyulak and Jesse are both replicants of both Corvo and Terry respectively, it's also unsurprising that they also have a similar dynamic, although admittedly not quite to the same degree. But a vital dynamic for both Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites is their constant family element. Both families are very, very dysfunctional, and they all have a very questionable relationship, but at the end of the day, they do at least care for one another. Yes, they have conflict. Yes, there are rivalries and mistakes are made, but the family ties are what keep them together when it's all said and done. They have some redemptive qualities, despite all of the horrifying things they do at times. In terms of tone, there is definitely one thing that ties Solar Opposites and Rick and Morty together, and that is meta-humor. In both shows, there are constant fourth wall breaks like the Szechuan sauce in Rick and Morty, and Hulu jokes in Solar Opposites for example, and Roiland loves to address the audience directly. I mean, even in the Solar Opposites title sequence he breaks the fourth wall. Rick and Morty had a super meta episode in Never Ricking Morty, when the duo are on a literal story train which takes a look at all of their potential narrative choices. Rick and Morty is known for their tons upon tons of film parodies and pop culture references. They even made a reference to a number of movies by one actor in the Quantum Ring episode, with a number of Kurt Russell movie parodies. Hyper-technology, which often causes hyper-violence, is also a fundamental part of both shows, with their protagonists often creating different sci-fi creations. These inventions sometimes also cross over. For example, a shrink ray. In the Rick and Morty episode Anatomy Park, Rick uses a shrink ray so he and Morty can shrink down and save Dr. Bloom from inside the body of an old homeless man named Reuben. This episode is also a great example of the movie parodies that I mentioned previously, with it being an obvious parody of Jurassic Park. Solar Opposites also uses a shrink ray, although it plays a more prominent feature within the show, with Yumyulak shrinking people who bully him, or who he just generally doesn't like, with him then placing them in his terrarium located in the wall. But as we said, technology in both shows is often used to go on spats of hyper-violence, with the armor that Yumyulak wears in the unstable gray hole automatically killing people to keep him safe, just like the car keeps Summer safe in Rick and Morty.
Keep Summer safe.
Seriously, the line "keep Summer safe" makes me laugh and shudder in equal measure. Another trope that both shows use is creating a sentient being that they can no longer control. In the first episode of Solar Opposites, Corvo and Terry make a real-life fun bucket before making a second one after the first one rejects them. This has disastrous consequences when the two meld together and mutate into a giant creature that goes on a murderous rampage. In Rick and Morty, Morty unwittingly becomes a father to an alien hybrid named Morty Jr. But Morty Jr. grows up too quickly and becomes out of control and goes on a rampage of his own. Another example in Rick and Morty is the moment Rick makes the family dog Snuffles, later Snowball, a helmet which gives him a high IQ before he builds a robot dog army and seeks to kill all humans. Both shows also have an example of AI becoming sentient as well. In Solar Opposites, Corvo builds a group of nanobots who eventually turn into one nanobot man and run against Corvo for president of the Homeowners Association. In Solar Opposites and the Patricia device, Corvo also makes a machine that he wants to hate his man cave to make it more realistic. But the machine once again goes rogue and starts wreaking havoc on any man in what resembles a man cave in the machine's proximity. In Rick and Morty, Rick also creates his own sentient robots, such as the Butter Robot, who learns his horrible role in life, a Mr. Meeseeks who can't help Jerry's golf game and wants to kill him for it, and even a Robot Morty, who realizes he is in fact alive. Another similarity between the shows is the fact that the show's protagonist accidentally creates terrifying dystopias. In Rick and Morty, the duo have to leave their Earth after they accidentally turn humans into director David Cronenberg-style mutants. Jerry, Beth, and Summer have all had to stay alive in the Cronenberg world by consuming Cronenberg meat. Yum-Yalak in Solar Opposites also makes a dystopia in his terrarium, as the humans he shrinks to set up their own society and end up dividing into factions and fighting over insulin. There's also a further tie-in between Solar Opposites and Rick and Morty in the terrarium, with characters even wearing rat armor, just like Pickle Rick! Because there are so many similarities between Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites, many fans have wondered if they are in a shared universe. Since both shows take place in an intergalactic setting, it does stand to reason that they might both take place in the same universe. Both shows have a big, expansive world with their own lore, with tons of different planets, dimensions, and species. So maybe we will see Rick and Morty run into the Schlorpians in the near future. Although, seeing as they're owned by different networks, yeah, I wouldn't count on it. Speaking of Schlorpian, the weird and funny name given to the alien race by Roiland feels like it would be perfectly at home in the world of Rick and Morty. That's because Rick and Morty also has a number of aliens and creatures with a series of funny names. Take, for example, the Booblusians, Nardwarvians, Dangelians, Gromflamites, Squanchies, Larvians, Moopians, Shimshamians, Tumblorkians, and of course, Mr. Poopy Butthole of the Mr. Poopy Butthole species. Despite there being a number of similarities between Solar Opposites and Rick and Morty, Justin Roiland is adamant that they are different shows in different worlds. Co-creator Mike McMahon also said that Solar Opposites is also closer to a traditional sitcom, and that the show is based on him being a giant sitcom nerd.